Okay, so now we're going to talk about decentralized apps. So, can you tell us like the types of decentralized apps which are available out there to help people access the peer-to-peer networks?
Sure. I mean, there has been an history of applications that rely on a peer-to-peer network for their functioning, starting with the torrent for a file download and repository of file, Skype as a communication system with video chats, and more or less centralized. There have been several others, so use a peer-to-peer network, but there was anyway one central server to coordinate things. So purely decentralized is more recent evolution. We know Bitcoin is, for example, a clear application of a peer-to-peer network, and many protocols that do peer-to-peer evolved to run a browser level as well. So there are protocols that connect peer-to-peer several browsers, allowing to do video streaming, video chat. There are functions to do streaming of videos in peer-to-peer networks. They're used a lot in many websites. People don't even know, but when they're watching the video is streamed to them peer-to-peer. And most voice over IP communications calls that go through peer-to-peer networks.
Oh, okay. And how do these systems work differently compared to the systems which rely on central servers?
Actually, there are many reasons why peer-to-peer networks are more effective into connecting, for example, voice calls or audio streams or video streams compared to central server that they do become a bottleneck in the collection and the distribution of data. So peer-to-peer network has the power to also create a direct connection between two specific peers in the moment that these two specific peers have data to transfer one another. So while the network is there to sustain a certain set of data, and for example, where to find in terms of IP address one particular user or other things like that, in the moment that a direct connection is needed, then the two endpoints talk directly one to the other, not creating a bottleneck with the central server where all the communication should go through. So in this moment, if there are 100 communication between 100 people and 100 other people, this will be 100 direct connection that don't choke one the other with in terms of internet usage. If they were running through a central server, obviously the central server should be connected with a very high speed in order to support all the 100 communication set. Plus makes the mass surveillance more difficult, because one thing is to have a central server where you can record, copy all the data they're going through the different connection. Another thing is to intercept each of the 100 direct peer-to-peer connections in order to then extract data from there. So it's higher in level of security as well.
Oh, and why certain peer-to-peer communication platforms like Signal or Telegram, like they still need to rely on central server in some cases?
It's simply because, for example, look at Telegram. It has a huge storage of data information. For example, all the images you upload are available wherever you connect yourself from. So it means that somewhere they need to be stored, and somewhere they need to be able to come back to you. And in a regular peer-to-peer network, this is not possible. For example, there are new communication system that rely purely in peer-to-peer network, where it's impossible to even keep a username. So you're gonna have only a session when you make a communication, but every time you are a new potential user. In fact, one platform that run on top of blockchain is called a session and does chat, but peer-to-peer, but without the storage that Telegram can offer.
Yeah, and then is that why Telegram has like a clearer voice quality because it facilitates direct trans communications among like between people instead of having to go through the bottlenecks.
The many advantages are obtained by connecting the peers directly. Others are going through a central server. Obviously, sometime also when you have proxies to go through, for example, a connection happen between me and you, but going through other nodes, then the pathway to get from one particular node to another can be various. So we can go from A to B to C to D, or from A to F to G, then to B to C. And this gives the chance to find the best connection to go through. For example, one utility that this has is into the Onion or Tor network, where many peers act as a communication network, and many peers act as a gateway proxy between the dark web, if you want, the Tor network and the rest of the internet. So I enter through one gateway, move inside the peer-to-peer network, get out through another gateway, connected to whatever server without being traced.
Oh, okay. And besides communication, what are some of the applications that people use to run the peer-to-peer network? For instance, when they need to make transactions or
So blockchain is one good example with all the evolution of all the things the blockchain can do, but this is a very well-known topic, right? Data storage, distributed data storage is another example, and there are several systems to store data in a decentralized manner, and which I'm not referring to torrent, I'm referring more to alternative of Box or whatever other Google Drive is there, that saved it along many peers that have hard drive space available. There are other utility for IoT devices, for example, in the sharing of information through their network and making information available to the IoT devices when needed.
Yeah. And are these apps complicated to use? So, like, usually, what are the obstacles for adoption among people?
But many people use Skype without knowing that. Now, not so much, but in the past, without knowing that they were using a peer-to-peer based application, right? Many people watch video in their website without knowing that the video is streamed to them via peer-to-peer. So many more complex application or more novel application have a more difficult to use interface, because still in the hand of the geeks that are making it possible, and not much on larger company that market the product, making it easy to access.
And for the other functionalities like supply chain document management, are they easy to use, or are they still in their infancy? I mean, like the apps which are used by the companies or the organizations.
Most of the solutions are based on blockchain, which particularly use a peer-to-peer network. They're not just peer-to-peers on their own. But most of the time, those are integrated with existing systems, so people don't even know where the data are going to be posted to or where they come from, making this an easy-to-use solution, because when people don't know that, they need to do something special to do that. On the other hand, is a matter of evolution of the application. I remember when people need to take lessons to be able to use the computer, and now the computer is so easy to use that people can use it without any previous education. So I think that this is the lifespan that this application need to go through as well.
Yeah, I was asking you about barriers to adoption. So, like, can low user interface readability be one of those barriers when we talk about certain apps?
See, there is a factor of trust and a factor of understanding, right? When we use the home banking, for example, or from mobile banking from our cell phone, we do rely on the fact that the application is behaving properly, right? Because how do we know? And the same thing goes when you're connected to a peer-to-peer network. So you need to know that the application you are using is in fact behaving properly. Applications are now a little bit rough. The usage are not very friendly because they're still in the hand of people making the things happening, the geeky people, which have a very particular view on how user interfaces. But eventually, they're going to become highly more usable for the average person. Some already are integrated and are easy to use. Skype is easy to use, and use a peer-to-peer network as an example.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a delay in connection. So can you say that again?
Everything is being saved on my side fluidly, no problem.
Yeah. And what are some of the? Yeah, I think the connection is quite poor, but yeah. Actually, I get your point, but. Like why some of these developers, they cannot like make the application more usable by more people, because maybe like they haven't tested it yet, or
no, simply because the expert doesn't see the need to use high level mechanism to do things. Look at the difference between Android system and iOS operating systems, right? Android or Linux and Windows and OS X. So where the user is more expert, things are more complex. So when the person designing an engine is asked to put together a car, he's gonna put there the essential things: the accelerator, the brake. Is not gonna make the seat to be super comfortable, because has no take on that aspect of the use. Is focused on the engine, is focused on the technical aspect. So when the demand goes to larger corporations have the budget to invest designing UI that are correct and with the UX that is a function for the user, then we're gonna find applications that are more easy to use.
And why only a small number of companies now have adopted blockchain for their supply chain management or document management? Because I think like for retailers, the big ones are only Walmart and Carrefour. But then, is it because of the awareness is still low?
I think that people never start fixing problems that don't exist. The old man that uses his own chomp and always doing business in that way don't have a reason to change something that is working okay for them. So changes in this field comes only from extreme innovators or large corporations that have the need to innovate to compete with the others. If you think about the work of some people, is okay until it's always the same. They go in the morning at the office, they do their work, and it doesn't change. They don't need to learn something else. They don't need to find a replacement to think. So thinking to bring evolution in the way they work is traumatic and something that is avoided unless there is a very tangible, direct necessity. For example, the large provider use a particular protocol, and if you don't use it, you are cut off. Then they're forced to upgrade and update it.
Yeah. And what about the cost? Like, is the decentralized decentralized platforms, are they more expensive than the centralized ones because like they are more scarce? I mean, like the developers are rare.
When you put all together, maybe there is higher cost, but this cost is scattered and shared between all the parties participating in the network. So for each party, the cost is way cheaper, right? And they are not dominated by one single company that can raise prices for subscriptions or can decide and monopolize all the communication between the parties. So a central system may become cheaper if you want when you have 1,000 nodes, because you multiply the cost 1,000 times of something less. But these 1,000 nodes are spread between 1,000 participants, making their cost almost zero compared the need of participating in a central system. Consider also that nobody's making money there, so there is no large maintenance cost, etc., etc.
Oh yeah. And what about the password issue? Like because like in decentralized system, there's no like one storage which holds everyone's password. So I think password recovery is a tricky thing because many people who invested in cryptocurrencies, they told me that like they lost their password and they could no longer access. They have no longer been able to access the accounts.
Depends how the system have been coded, obviously, because if the system is being prepared properly, like for a supply chain, there is always a way to recover things. But for how the centralized system work, there are different approach to validate the user compared to a system that is centralized. So obviously, you cannot use username and password, but you use cryptography with digital signature to authenticate the user. The management of the private key, there are the very particular parts that cannot be changed on one party, is something that is not yet being addressed properly by the tech community. So there is no one precise solution that guarantee an easy and good management of private key. But it's going to come up automatically with the evolution of the technology.
Yeah, and I think right now we have some external softwares which we can use to recover the passwords. I don't know what's it called. Is it a software or like some different application?
It doesn't recover. Does not recover. It holds in a safe manner the private key, which are a hardware wallet. A little bit the same thing like the token that the bank gives you to do remote banking to guarantee that it's you signing the transaction that you want to do at the bank and not somebody else. Identical, also peer-to-peer system may use a hardware device that guarantee that it's you signing and not somebody else. These hardware devices need to be initialized with the correct seed phrases called, which guarantee that you is you and not somebody else. And this can be, let's say, a company will prepare several of these keys and some leave them in the safe in case somebody lose one. There are also systems to do multiple signatures. So let's say there are 10 people and you need 6 at least to sign. So there are many different ways to address the management of the key that are already there. It's culturally hard to understand, but it's something that is being done already.
And when a company or organization decides to adopt the technology, do they know how the technology works and how to operate it? Is it the case, or they can just run it by themselves?
So you've been lagging, and I missed the question. I don't know that you repeat that.
Okay. Let me repeat my question. So when a company or an individual or an organization wants to use the technology, what's the common practice? Like, is it typical for them to hire a consultant to help them understand how to run and then how to maintain the system? So is it part of the fee? I mean, like, is it part of the cost of the service provided by the blockchain company?
So let's say that the system exists already and the softwares are there, they don't need anything. Let's say you want to join the Bitcoin blockchain, you can download any wallet or you can run your own node without the need of any consultancy. Let's say you want to integrate in your system so that people can check out paying with that, or there is a particular supply chain blockchain that you want to integrate your system with. Obviously, you're gonna need a software architect to help you integrate with your system. You want to architect a completely new blockchain, then it's all another story. But it depends on the layer of how are you entering this realm by simply using somebody else's stuff or modifying somebody else's stuff or creating your own stuff. Then.
Yeah, and based on my understanding that with the traditional centralized system, let's say in an organization or a company, typically different departments, they use different apps or they use different softwares in order to manage different affairs. I mean, like finances, HR. So like it creates data silos among different departments. And then I read from some news article from that the blockchain tech is, so what's the advantage of the blockchain technology in terms of breaking these data silos?
So the architecture of a system can change based on the need, right? How it's designed, how it is implemented to satisfy a particular need of processes rather than of security or so on and so forth. So based on this, surely once you have a blockchain, you can code the transaction type. There are consequent one to the other, which means that before you can do step 2, you need to do step 1 and so on and so forth. You can follow checklist, or can do many other things of sort. And it is allowed to give us some more brain to the processes that are, being managed by the blockchain. Yes.
And I would like to know also about traceability. Because I heard that when Walmart adopted the technology, it was triggered by an outbreak. Sorry, can you still hear me?
I hear you. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So when, for instance, in 2017, some maintain their supply chain system, it was actually triggered by an outbreak of E. coli in their lettuces. And then, like they said, that with the blockchain technology, it ensures traceability, so like they can backtrack on what have gone wrong in the process. But now I'm really interested in to get to know about the capacity of the blockchain itself. Because people actually see lots of potentials in its ability to maintain that data and information and to make it transparent. But then what about the capacity and the scalability of the storage and the ledgers? Compared to the centralized one.
It depends on the infrastructure that is put in place for the specific blockchain. So blockchain on its own is limited by the capacity that the infrastructure has, right? So if I have all nodes that are data centers, that are high level connectivity to the internet, very strong and big computer with a lot of disk space and good maintenance, I can run a blockchain with huge storage amount, huge processing power, very fast transaction. If I rely on nodes that run on a Raspberry Pi, for example, with a smaller drive inside of 64 gigabytes, obviously the things that the blockchain can support are limited. It's not something that is huge. So based on the solution, based on the need, there is the correct infrastructure that is implemented and is going to be supported properly. It's a legend that the blockchain doesn't delete anything. So you can have a blockchain that keep only the past 2 months of data. That's it. Doesn't have to keep all. Then you can have special nodes because every transaction is broadcast to the whole network. They keep memory of all the transaction happen. So those are special storage nodes that have a database that you can use to do research, etc., etc. It's an individual choice of the person running the node. But you can have blockchain that don't bloat. It depends on the blockchain. The query are very simple or complex. It depends on the depends on how it's being programmed and what it's doing.
And also like with some of the hardwares which only have small capacities, such as the Raspberry Pi. So like, what are their functions? With such a limited capacity.
If the blockchain doesn't have to do complex things, that's enough, right? If in the blockchain you need to run queries that are very complex, they require very fast, SSD drive plus processor. They need to do a particular mathematical calculation because there are transactions. They need to, found, particular results, then you need a powerful one. If a blockchain is like on plus and minus on a simple data set, a small computer is good enough.
Oh, okay. So again, the tool has to fit the purpose.
Absolutely, correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you have a notebook,
I think you mentioned last week,
document, you have a notebook to do games, video games. The gamers have super powerful computer, while journalist is enough that he does Microsoft Word, but some Google research.
And then you mentioned last week some of the complex functions include loan provision and document management. With the most recent advances, these are some of the more complex functions which can be achieved by the technology.
You can connect anything. You can have an IoT device that take a video and post the video as transaction. You can have special nodes in the blockchain that take the video, do object recognition inside the videos in order to say the word is, boxes, this car model, this QR codes, whatever. You can have a lot of other functionality that are complex, and require a powerful processor. You can require all the nodes in the blockchain to process this. You can require just a subset of nodes that are more powerful to process that. Depends how the blockchain is programmed, it's coded, and how the system is architected and implemented.
And what about compatibility of the apps? Are they compatible with any devices or only with computers, and some can be used on smartphones?
And again, one more time, depends what the apps has to do, right? So the node of a blockchain run the node that has its own specifics. So then the app needs just to query some information. It can be a mobile application. If the app needs to process certain information, probably need a certain computer power to do so on and so forth. So it all depends how and what has to be done.
Okay. And I would like to ask a question about human resources actually, because of course, the quality of the apps will depend on the ones who create them. But then, just how are the human resources? The programmers or the students at this time. How ready are they to program or create those infrastructures?
There are very little resources available. People that know deeply how blockchain work. Reasons are that Ethereum has this smart contract, and a lot of developers that approach blockchain get stuck in the smart contract world, which means they never understand how the part of a blockchain. As I understand, in terms of having the capacity to put their hands on consensus or transaction types. So the few that go there are few. So there is not many yet, but eventually Also with IoT devices, you cannot get any more developers to program things at so much high level. You still need all the C developers that can create and compile software for particular processors. So it's going to be a new wave of genuine developers coming up. And this is due to a particular requirement like of IoT devices, of particular hardware devices that are used in blockchain and other things.
And what are the most current advances or progress which we can see in the world of app development?
That are all connected to smart contracts. I think all the decentralized finance world and NFT craze that is being up lately are the peak of what the blockchain technology can do specifically. In terms of peer-to-peer more generally, I think the communication channel, the fact that with our cell phone we can connect via internet and talk and send video to people on the other side of the planet, like we're doing now between Italy and Indonesia with Zoom. We are doing this, and these are all I think the apex of all the technology when it comes to peer-to-peer networks and applications around it.
Yeah, and maybe like the NFT hype which happened, which started at the start of this year, can be an indicator that the apps are more user-friendly now, and that the technology is more understandable by like people.
Yeah, and the most beautiful thing, in my opinion, is the fact that technology can do things that are not just cryptocurrency, which is the biggest message, right? So people can move out of the cryptocurrency world, still use blockchain to do things that are just creating a title of, ownership of a piece of art or something like that.
Yeah, so not to only use the cryptocurrency to get rich, right? Yeah, I think that's all from me. Do you have anything more to add about these peer-to-peer apps?
I think more time goes ahead, more cool stuff we're gonna see, and hopefully the right money goes in the right places to get the cool stuff developed and accessible to people. Independently, where people make a lot of money or not.
I forget like one thing, because like in the peer-to-peer network, actually like everybody can access, or theoretically everybody in the network can actually access, like their peers' data and information. So like how can we maintain the privacy when certain data needs to be private, right? Like documents or private.
There are two aspects. One is the data that are needed to make a logic in the system, right? So if you want something that function, that's to be clear. You cannot hide it because else the node don't know how to process it. Another thing is data that are there for private reason. In more cases, it should be in a decentralized storage. And they're encrypted. So encryption is the way to keep data private in an open system. Mathematical encryption means transforming the text file, the video, the photo into a mumbo jumbo of data that doesn't make any sense, that can be returned then in something that makes sense thanks to a decryption key. And the decryption key is what allow people to see or not the content.
So like in that way they can disguise the content of this private data, right? So it's not to be.
What is beautiful is that a document that contains several parts of information. Let's say I go to the hospital, there is a folder about me, and there is the financial aspect, so much money I pay to the cashier, etc., and then there is the medical aspect. Even three different doctors that take care of three different aspects of me that they don't need to know about. So you can use different encryption key to encrypt different pieces of data in the same container. So the cashier only see how much money I need to pay, and it doesn't know which is my sickness, which I keep private. The doctor, they check one particular sickness, can see all the data related to that problem without knowing even how much money I pay the hospital, if I have insurance or not, which is my own problem. So we can use encryption even in encrypting portion of a document, not just the full thing or not.
Yeah, and I think like the promise that these apps have for the future. I think I saw Don Tapscott on his TED Talk, and then he said, like currently we have the apps provided to us by the tech giants, so like ride-hailing apps such as Uber or what else, Airbnb. But then, unfortunately, like the middlemen or the gatekeepers, they suck a big amount of money, right? Like from the seller. So like, for instance, I tried experimenting with a calculator. So like if I were a courier and I work for one of those e-commerce giants and I could only deliver one package per day, I would only get like 60,000 rupiah per month. And Scott said, like the peer-to-peer network, by enabling the drivers and the couriers, right, to sell their products and services directly to the people, they can, get more money out of it.
We don't have to think that because it's peer-to-peer, there is no more middleman, if you want, or somebody that is maintaining the system. Because the difference from a centralized, there is a company that maintains the server and all, to the peer-to-peer, there are the nodes. So a peer-to-peer service still need to be paid. So if I make a call through a peer-to-peer service, I have to pay because this money don't go to the big company, but go to all the people maintaining a node, because without them, there would be no peer-to-peer network, there would be no service. So if Airbnb was to be transformed to be a peer-to-peer service, people running node need to be paid for run a node because they have their own expenses in running the server, etc., etc. So the fee that you're paying for Airbnb, rather than going to the central company, will be distributed between the people that run the nodes. That's why we think about initial node offering, like to finance a peer-to-peer project, people pay for the right to run a node, because then the node is what is going to collect the revenue of the system, because there is no central owner, there is no big the big company that own the system.
Okay, so yeah, there are lots of misunderstandings still about the technology, right? So it's important to talk about it in more depth in order to understand the intricacies. And if it's like because there's no free lunch, as they say. So like we still have to pay like the nodes which maintain the network. But can you say, is it fair to say that it's still a much fairer scheme compared to decentralized companies?
Depend on how it's coded. So it's case to case. You will never know, So people can make it more expensive, less expensive. Depends how it is coded. But obviously, because you have alternative and everything can be copied and pasted easily, if it's not fair, people just don't use it and it's gonna die on its own. So you can make a system for which is automatically balanced out between what people afford to pay and what people need to be paid.
Yeah, so that's why competition is good, maybe. Okay, Rob, I think I've asked you all my questions, so thank you.
All right.
See you again next time. All right.